was a great thrill. No, he didn't. The Rules Committee will come to order. Mr. McGovern has very generously given us the indication that we should proceed with hearing from our distinguished panel, and I will report it as soon as we get a quorum, and I can assure you we won't report this out, and Mr. Hastings is getting us closer to that. So we're one shy of a quorum, and I'm sure we'll have it before too long. We're here for consideration of the Energy and Water Development Appropriations Act Bill of 2012, and we're happy to welcome the chairman of the subcommittee. I'm happy to say we now have a quorum in the room, and we have more than a quorum in the room now that Ms. Slaughter is here. We had one with Mr. Nugent, and now welcome back to everyone. I hope everyone had a nice Independence Day. And let me say that without objection, any prepared statement that either of you have will appear in the record in its entirety. And we welcome your summary. So, Chairman Frelinghuysen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Slaughter. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. Our 2012 Energy and Water Bill provides for $30.6 billion, which is $1.1 billion below fiscal year 2011 and $5.9 billion below the President's request, bringing the total down to approaching the fiscal year 2006 level. The bill also includes an additional $1 billion in emergency spending to address flooding in the Midwest. There are no congressional earmarks in the bill, of course. The bill supports critical national security programs by providing $10.6 billion to the National Nuclear Security Administration and supports the modernization of our nuclear arsenal. The bill also fully supports urgent ongoing efforts to secure vulnerable nuclear materials worldwide and the full request to design a new reactor for the replacement of the Ohio-class ballistic missile submarine. We've seen catastrophic flooding as it affects our nation, and we've provided $4.8 billion for the Army Corps of Engineers to continue to address big concerns of public safety. This bill also makes funds available above the President's request for navigation and flood control, the activities most critical to public safety, jobs, and the economy. It gives the Corps 45 days to deliver and justify its spending plan. This will give each project, whether in the President's budget or not, the opportunity to compete for these funds and ensure we understand how the Corps really develops its request. Scientific research at the Department of Energy strengthens American competitiveness, enables true breakthroughs in the energy section. This sort of research is too far away from the marketplace to be attractive to the private sector, and the bill preserves strong funding for these activities at $4.8 billion. The committee also continues to support nuclear energy, providing $8 billion above the request for ongoing research and promising new programs, such as small nuclear reactors. By reducing funding where stimulus funds are still available, or where the private sector is able to invest without federal help, the bill reduces funding for the energy efficiency and renewable account to $1.3 billion. The bill upholds our historic cleanup responsibilities by funding the Defense Environmental Cleanup at $4.3 billion. The bill also provides $160 million to support loan guarantees while preserving existing loan authority. The bill includes $35 million to support the economic activities and enforces stronger oversight of the Department of Energy, the NRC, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and ensures that the administration follows the will of Congress. Our bill also includes new reporting requirements, so the administration must track and show that investment we make in science and technology are effective use of taxpayers' dollars. It also calls on the administration to aggressively terminate projects and programs which are not delivering results. Mr. Chairman, we take seriously our responsibility to rein in federal spending in fiscal year 2010. I'd like to thank my ranking member, Mr. Viskovsky, for his input and our close working relationship and that of our staff. We don't agree on everything, but we always work very closely together. And lastly, Mr. Chairman, we've worked very closely with the authorizing committees to address their requests and concerns. However, there are large parts of the Department of Energy which remain unauthorized, including the national security programs and environmental cleanup activities. These are critical programs I ask that the rule protect the provisions of the bill from Clause 2 of Rule 21 so that they can continue. I would also ask that the rule provide the standard protection for all points of order against consideration of the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Frelinghuysen. Mr. Visklosky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Ms. Slaughter, and the members of the committee, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. The Energy and Water Bill funds critical water resource projects, supports science activities necessary to our competitiveness, and contributes to our national defense through vital weapons, nuclear naval reactor research, and nonproliferation funding. These are all priorities that unite rather than divide us. And the chairman has worked very hard, given the situation he finds himself in as far as his allocation, to work closely with myself, with all members of the subcommittee, to develop a very good work product. I joined the chairman in asking the committee to provide for an open rule. While I truly appreciate the chairman's considerable efforts and recognize, again, the difficult choices that had to be made to address the nation's serious financial situation, I must point out that this bill starkly illustrates the short-sighted nature of the spending cap set by the House budget. The allocation for energy and water is simply insufficient to meet the challenges posed by the economic downturn and to guarantee our national security. Within the constraints of this allocation, the bill rightfully provides funds for the following priorities: saving taxpayers' dollars by continuing to push for improved and more effective project management, and particularly appreciate the chairman's very vigorous efforts here on behalf of agency programs, especially at the Department of Energy. Additionally, investing in dam safety, flood protection, and hydropower modernization. The bill, however, does not come close to addressing the dredging backlog that plagues waterborne commerce in the United States. There is about a $1.448 billion backlog as far as emergency repairs alone for the Army Corps of Engineers. Also for providing for disaster response to address the impacts on the flooding in Missouri and Mississippi River basins. The chairman and I are agreed on that, although I disagree with the notion that all funding for these domestic emergency response must be offset. Investing in American competitiveness by providing funding for the science account at a level that is essentially the same as 2011, which is a not insignificant achievement in light of the allocation. And while I believe that the chairman has produced a reasonable bill and a good bill that balances competing interests given the resources available, I would have to highlight several areas that I believe were not adequately addressed. One is the issue of our energy and dependence on foreign oil. I do believe, regrettably, we underfund investment in alternative domestic transportation fuels and new vehicle technology. I also regret that more monies were not provided as far as our non-proliferation accounts, because I believe our greatest national security threat is that of nuclear terrorism. And finally, as far as environmental cleanup at the nation's nuclear complex, the funding in the bill includes for the environmental management activities, but is insufficient from my perspective to meet the federal government's legal obligations to clean up its defense nuclear waste. Again, thank you very much.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. I want to thank you, Mr. Visklosky, for decorating our Rules Committee office so beautifully on the floor here.
I will pick up after myself, Mr. Chairman.
I will, as I watched.
I get confused easily.
Obviously, you've talked about the budget constraints with which we have to contend. And for you, Mr. Visklosky, to say under these very challenging circumstances, you believe that the chairman has come up with a good bill, I think lays the groundwork for what I hope this committee will do, and that is to have an open amendment process on the floor so that Democrats and Republicans alike will, as has been the case with other appropriations bills, have an opportunity to, the other appropriations bills have the opportunity to participate. So I have no questions other than to congratulate you on your work product. Mr. Woodall.
Mr. Chairman, I just had a question about the Corps of Engineers funding in light of the way Congress formerly did programmatic requests, the way we're handling that now. What is that next oversight step? When we're not doing line items, directing the Corps line by line, which projects to take on and which projects
There are presidential earmarks, and there are no congressional earmarks, but let's say there's always been a high level of congressional interest in the water bill since, shall we say, the founding of the Republic. So if you look at the history of the Corps, it is member interest, either House of Representatives or Senate. So if you look at that construct, but we're prohibited from having congressional earmarks. We have shaved the presidential earmarks, some of which, of course, are of keen interest to members, so that we would have a fund where members could compete for navigation and flood control purposes. So the Army Corps will be given 45 days to sort of come up with a priority plan, and we hope that navigation issues that of particular interest to members, that they'll let that interest be known.
And moving Savannah River Harbor, Savannah Harbor, one of my priorities there from the great state of Georgia, moving that from the investigations account over to the construction account, even though that's not where the President requested it, that does not run afoul of our January 5th earmark ban.
I don't believe it does, no.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dryer, and thank you, gentlemen. I know you did suffer quite a loss here in your allocation, and it's difficult, but I'd like to confine myself to the high-speed rail issue. Like I think almost every other American now, I've decided if we're going to rebuild a country, it should be ours. The fact that we've been, decades here with no high-speed rail, while the other countries that we're all defending and paying for are going around quite nicely. And our critical need for jobs. I find it strange, and I just want to ask a few questions here to try to understand exactly what you're doing now. The amendment provides $1.28 billion in emergency funding to the Corps of Engineers to repair the damage caused by recent storms and floods, which of course has to be done, and something as long as I've been in Congress, we've always met that obligation. But you offset this funding by the rescission of the remaining emergency high-speed rail funding approved in ARA. Traditionally, how have these types of emergency services been met?
By charging it up to the U.S. credit card, basically. I mean, under, a
We've
number
always
of...
met that obligation without...
yeah.
Right. Is it common practice to have one subcommittee use an offset in another subcommittee's jurisdiction? Is that done, Mr. Visclosky?
Ms. Slaughter, I don't know the answer to that. I would add, though, that the question you raised really transcends a particular account, and I want to make it clear to all of the members here so no one believes I'm duplicitous. Mr. Frelinghuysen had an amendment in the committee because he did believe an offset should occur to provide the emergency funding. There was no debate that the emergency exists and we needed to fund. My contention in offering a perfecting amendment was that we should, because we have spent money for the Corps in emergencies under the defense bill overseas. We have spent about $24 billion for the Corps in emergencies, most of which have gone because of Katrina since 2000. But the fact is, I also voted for Mr. Frelinghuysen's amendment after my perfecting amendment failed because as far as the outlay impact of the amendment that was adopted by the committee is identical to the amendment I offered, which had no offset because the offset was on budget authority. But more importantly, if I could just ask.
Certainly.
In a bill unrelated to what we are here for today, Homeland Security, there was an offset that was taken from our committee.
Yeah, they took $1 billion out of our bill to make the Homeland Security bill.
For emergency purposes.
Emergency
again,
purposes.
For
Yeah.
floods. And my contention.
How could they do that? They just did it.
Say, well, they had an amendment and.
It's not...
In their committee, and it passed, and therefore your money can go
it's-
generously from them to
in that
them.
case-
It happened in other Congresses that the committees would, that the money would be found from other committees. I
Very
can tell you.
strange process to me.
But Ms. Slaughter, if I could again, it's a philosophy doesn't get you very far on Appropriations Committee. So I use the term guardedly, but in the case of Homeland Security, the account from our bill that the monies were taken from was for advanced technology vehicle manufacturing loans. it left a razor-thin margin relative to loans that have already been approved by the department. And my concern longer term in this country is if Homeland takes money out of advanced vehicle technology, if energy and water, by necessity, because of the current climate, takes money out of a particular investment account, I'm concerned. Because if you look at the studies by the American Society of Civil Engineers in 2009, we've got over $1 trillion shortfall as far as investing in our basic infrastructure, and I'm concerned about going down that road generically.
Well, I certainly think we all should be concerned about that. We seem to be able to spend $12 billion a month on a war without anybody much discussing it. But when it comes to spending some money on ourselves, we're desperate for jobs here. Why we would take away a program that just in my part of the country is going to create 21,000 jobs, I really don't know how I'm going to explain that to people, that Homeland Security took your money, so you took ours. I mean, it's just, it seems really odd. Well, what's the impact going to be on jobs? Have you thought about that? By taking away the high-speed rail money?
Well, you and I come from the state, from the Northeast.
Exactly, and you know how badly we need help.
Yeah, and, with all due respect to the term high speed, no matter what we put into the Northeast Corridor, it'll never be high speed. And I've supported investments, but in reality, a good portion of that money was directed to Florida for their high-speed rail.
Well, they turned it down.
They turned it down.
Some of it.
But there has been actually no official redirection.
Actually, there was. New York got some from Florida.
Well,
that money has been reallocated.
But evidently not all of it has been redirected, according to Mr. Latham, who's was a taking from his committee.
He asked for it within 15 minutes, I think, of the governor turning it down. It's very important to us. We are in a very serious position economically.
Ms. Slaughter, if I might interject too,
Certainly.
Assuming the monies would be obligated and that the monies would be spent, there's a wide range as far as the estimate of the potential job impact. The White House would suggest something like 23,000 jobs. The Department of Transportation would suggest 60,000 jobs. Those are their estimates, not mine, and I would acknowledge that there is a wide range in those numbers.
Well, I think you'd be interested, particularly, I know you would, Mr. Frelinghuysen, that they're starting already this summer. We've got some places up around the Capital District in Albany that has single track, so that it's been an awful bottleneck for 100 years. They're going to start working on that to
Well, there's been some money in the
money
pipeline for the Northeast
yes,
Corridor.
yes.
It's not that this money that was in Mr. Latham's committee, which was transferred to our jurisdiction, is immediately available. I mean, he made the point. First of all, he put a very human face on the needs of people in his congressional district, as he did for others that have suffered in the floods. And with all due respect, there are no plans.
Mr. Frelinghuysen, none of us want those people not to be made whole. I think it's been a really dreadful year for disasters in America. But I just, in my recollection, in the years I've been in Congress, we never had to do major offsets and take away other programs and kill bills to do that. We simply took care of those obligations.
Ms. Slaughter, it would be my hope that looking forward, people would have the intestinal fortitude to realize that we do have natural disasters on an annualized basis.
Exactly.
And money
And be ready for it.
set aside
Yes.
so that can be taken care
And
of.
that they're increasing.
So that people don't have to make choices such as Homeland made and that this subcommittee had to make.
I agree. I don't think you can run a country like the United States of America under those kinds of rules. But thank you both very much. I know you had a very hard job, and I appreciate your doing it. Thank you.
Ms. Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank the chairman and ranking member for coming today and presenting. I do have a concern when we talk about creating jobs from the federal level when I hear reports such as the one I heard about the stimulus spending, that the jobs, that quote jobs that were created cost about $282,000 per job. I think that we have to be very mindful of what Mr. Frelinghuysen said, that is, we're doing this on borrowed money, And I think the American people are quite concerned. We all realize we need a certain amount of infrastructure, and that historically the federal government has gotten involved in these areas. But I think we have to be very, very careful that we're borrowing so much money, and that the cost of the jobs that are being created from the federal government level range between $200,000 and $300,000 a job. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If I may respond, one of the problems with the stimulus money, and for that, with all due respect to the Northeast Corridor, these are all under the Davis-Bacon, all under prevailing wage, and what was outrageous about the stimulus is that right-to-work states were subject to the same burden, which I think was pretty outrageous.
Thank you for adding that.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I don't think Davis-Bacon is a burden. I think trying to lift our workers up and pay them an honest, decent wage is not a bad thing. But, everybody's talking about borrowing money. I just came back from Afghanistan. And I saw we're building bridges, we're building roads, we're building hospitals, we're building schools, all of it on borrowed money. And there's no outrage here at all about that, none. And yet we express this great outrage if you want to build a bridge, or fix a river, or have the Army Corps go ahead and do a project here in the United States of America. So I get it. We're trying to find ways to, live within our means and balance our budget. But, a lot of the stuff that is done under your bill not only creates jobs but helps boost up infrastructure. And the cost of not moving forward with some of these projects, of allowing our infrastructure to continue to deteriorate, I think in the long run is going to be devastating, not just in terms of jobs, but in terms of the cost of trying to rebuild this country. And I just, I get it about people trying to find offsets, but I wish there was a little bit more outrage around here about the fact that we're not offsetting any of the stuff we're doing in Afghanistan or Iraq. I think I'm all for, we want to build a school over there, fine. But, we need to build schools, roads, bridges. We need to fix natural disasters right here in the United States. And that we nickel and dime things when it comes to our country. But when it's happening halfway around the world, we're just totally, oblivious. We're the ATM card for a very corrupt government in Afghanistan. So I appreciate what you both have done. I think it's a lousy allocation. I wish it were a bigger allocation. Hopefully the Senate will boost it up a little bit, because I do think that the stuff that you do in this bill is incredibly important to the, to the economic well-being and future of this country. And so, it's not that I have any complaints with what you've done. It's kind of like we need to do more. And sometimes an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And sometimes you need to invest in order to save money and to grow. And in infrastructure stuff, water development issues, and all the stuff that's under this bill, I think I think we're in deep need of more help, not less. So I thank you for your work and look forward to seeing this on the floor, hopefully under an open rule.
Well, I just want to thank you for the hard work that you did to get this bill to where it is on the appropriation side. I went to Afghanistan too, and I agree with you that we've been funding wars without having the necessary money to do it. My question is, I just got here 6 months ago. The wars have been going on for 10 years. A lot of you have been here for a lot longer. And so if that was an issue, why wasn't it fixed 2 years ago?
Will the gentleman yield?
Absolutely.
Yeah, some of us tried to fix it. I even went so far as introducing a bill calling for a war tax. But there hasn't been the political will, I think, on either side to want to pay for the wars, because the cost is so enormous. And it's been very troubling to me that that in this discussion on the debt, that we're talking about everything but the cost of the war, and that's Republicans and Democrats alike. So Bush, Obama,
if you yield back,
difference. Yeah.
And I certainly agree with you. But at the end of the day, and we talk about offsets, at the end of the day, we are borrowing money to keep our government functioning at the rate of 42 cents on every dollar. None of us want to see any of these cuts. I don't believe there's a person up here that thinks that we want to do this just because we can. It's because we have to. For this republic to maintain its status and to maintain a viable place for our kids to grow up and have jobs, we need to make tough decisions today. And that's what you've done. And you can disagree, and that's good. I mean, that's what America's about. At the end of the day, we do have to cut spending. So I do applaud you for that.
Gentlemen, the extraordinarily difficult task that you have given the budgetary constraints. I do have a fundamental disagreement, not with the two of you, but with all of us, applying and putting more money into nuclear weapons and diminishing research in the areas that you all have addressed as best you can. And I just don't understand that. I also want to echo the sentiments of Mr. McGovern and reply to my good friend from Florida, Mr. Nugent, that I agree with everything that he said, Mr. Nugent and Mr. McGovern. And Ms. Slaughter and Mr. McGovern and I, as well as others, have been consistent in pointing out, not only in this committee, but in the whole of Congress. We have been on the floor, not just with Afghanistan, but even more so with Iraq, where it's becoming very clear that when we finish, we will have done nothing to help the United States of America. And we will have spent more than $1 trillion, interestingly, that matches our needs at this time. And I tried just recently and during the run-up in that war, as Mr. McGovern did the war tax, I sought to have Iraq, the third largest oil field in the world, at least pay us for the construction money that we have put there. And it's not permitted according to the parliamentarian. And so I continue to raise that as an issue. Mr. Chairman, with your permission in answering this question, I would like to introduce the historical debt ceiling levels and try to add some temporizing effect to the run-up that we are going to have between now and August 3rd with reference to the debt ceiling. While all of us are in agreement that there is a need to cut spending. I want to disabuse all of the members, and therefore I'm going to send this to all of the offices of the members of Congress, so as how they can see precisely what we have done with the debt ceiling. And I shan't go into all of it at this moment. I merely wish it to be placed in this record. But I'd have you know, since 1940, we have raised the debt ceiling 73 times.
Without objection, the statement will be heard.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I have voted for 9 of those. And interestingly enough, we were at different points during the Carter administration, at different points during World War II, and some other times when we were in recessionary times. We passed clean debt ceilings. I just want y'all to know that.
Scott. Yes, sir. Question.
I just want to thank the committee for maintaining Yucca Mountain. To me, the ratepayers in Florida have contributed to that for probably, well, it'll be almost 20 years. And for that, we're longer than 20 years, almost 30 years probably. And I really appreciate you doing that. I think it's a very good thing, and it shows a commitment. If there is some sort of halt, as opposed to be a sort of a cease and desist, why not a glide path of some sort, as opposed to just stopping it altogether? I think that would be a lot better for the whole country.
We're going to do our best, through you, Mr. Chairman, to keep Yucca Mountain alive for the reasons you state. We've made a substantial investment there, probably $12 billion, and there is a presidential Blue Ribbon Commission,
Right.
and they need to have as part of their charge to take a look at Yucca again. We're not going to let, and I think this is somewhat pretty much bipartisan, that investment go to waste.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your hard work, and I hope very much that we'll have an open rule for you to have what will be a fascinating and free-flowing debate on the House floor. So that concludes the hearing portion for consideration of H.R. 2354. The chair will be in receipt of a motion.
Mr. Chairman, before I make the motion, could I recognize the fact that we have...
You filled the room, so I want you to introduce everyone here as you came in with your delegation.
We have 4 students here from Duke University who are spending the summer in D.C. studying, and they came to see the Rules Committee and are going to see votes. And then we have Dr. David Olson from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro with us for the Rules Committee.
So I noticed the Duke students are sitting over here, and UNC is over here.
Well,
Significance to that at all?
We simply did what we were instructed to do, right?
Ooh. Good job there, Dougie. Good job.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I move the committee grant H.R. 2354, the Energy and Water Development Appropriations Act 2012, an open rule. The rule provides 1 hour of general debate on the bill, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Appropriations. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. The rule waives points of order against provisions in the bill for failure to comply with Clause 2 of Rule 21. The rule provides that the bill shall be considered for amendment under 5-minute rule. The rule authorizes the chair to accord priority and recognition to members who have pre-printed their amendments in the congressional record. Finally, the rule provides 1 motion to recommit with or without instructions.
You've heard the motion of the gentlewoman from Grandfather Community. Any discussion or amendment? If not, the vote occurs on the gentlewoman's motion. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. Pin share. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. And Mr. Webster will be managing this rule for the majority.
Mr. Polis.
And Mr. Polis. Thank you all very much. We have a meeting time set for tomorrow, 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. We're going to be meeting on the flood bill. Thank you all very much. Without objection, the committee stands adjourned.